Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil me and Parrish.
Hey, Phil. So glad to have you as always. Unlike recent weeks, we got a lot to talk about today, and most interesting of all is a letter from faithful listener Kenneth Smyson. What does Ken have to tell us this week, Phil?
Well, he wanted to talk about our political show from a few weeks ago.
Uh-oh.
No, don't worry. He says, "Hey guys, thanks for the mental beef jerky from the more political show. It's a deep well worth dipping into from time to time. It got me thinking how much comic book movies are in a way taking the place of sci-fi movies. In decades past, great filmmakers like Kubrick, Spielberg, and even horror director George Romero used sci-fi films to explore deeper themes. Socio-political topics, racial differences, economic equality, geopolitical issues, etc. were all put on a sci-fi backdrop of aliens, futuristic societies, and the zombie apocalypse. Thankfully, genuine sci-fi films are making a cautious but steady comeback with movies like Gravity, Interstellar, and recently The Arrival. I blame the CG boom of the 90s for derailing sci-fi with pretty but cheap popcorn films. Although truth be told, most comic books have elements of sci-fi in their stories and character creations. Are there any political themes you'd like to see explored in the MCU or DCEU? Have a good one."
Well, that's that. I mean, what would we like to see? The sad truth is I think that so much of our modern world, that if you put it in a comic book, people would say, "Well, that's just ridiculous." No one would vote for Lex Luthor if he talked like Donald Trump. It's like the whole selling point of President Luthor or even Norman Osborn is that they were slick and savvy politicians, and no one, I mean, not even Senator Kelly with his anti-mutant rhetoric was as off the rails as Donald Trump has gotten with his rhetoric, and that's not to be all political at people, but it's like I don't know, in many ways it's like Donald Trump is the death of satire. It's like, how do you mock something where it's just already burlesque? He is already his own burlesque. How do you deal with that when someone is going to just be out there in that way, and you're like, I don't even know how to address that. It is strange and disconcerting to a grand extent. Beyond that, I mean, obviously, you always have, I think it's always a problem whenever you say, "Oh, I would love to see them tackle this issue," because I find that anytime they tackle an issue, it kind of almost comes off as kind of bad. I looked at Star Trek in that issue, where yes, there are some great Star Trek episodes and great Star Trek episodes where issues are in there, but anytime they try to make an issue, it kind of like it kind of gets very preachy and heavy-handed. And it's like when the issue seems to evolve organically, it's great when they deal with it. And a great example of this, I kind of think Mark Waid's recent Champions book, Champions 3, really hit that balance where it and for what it's worth, that was an intentionally political book, but it found a perfect way to hit the balance between telling the story in a political context, and in this specific case, it's about women's rights in the third world. Although one of the worries for me when they were addressing that was that how easy it is to make these third world bad guys and these third world, to create, basically when you create a fictional country and put fictional bad guys in it to be fictionally bad to fictional women, and you can make them be over the top. You can make them be, Donald Trumps, if you will. You can have them be someone that, you wouldn't think could actually exist in the real world, who should be so obviously, evil. You can create that, And I kind of, as much as I love that book, I kind of think, the more difficult story to tell is the story that, where, it's the problems you can't punch that are the more difficult stories to tell, It's like this. It's very easy to go to a place on the other side of the world where there is a clear bad guy doing clearly bad things. You go to Appalachia, and there's corrupt politicians, but if the people are the ones who are supporting that politician, how do you stand against them? And it gets into these crazinesses, and even beyond Appalachia, because I don't even want to single out the impoverished American rural class. I mean, all over this country, you have people who are, who people want to say, well, I want to say that I just disagree, and it's like, well, yeah, but what you're disagreeing with is reality or whatever. It's a lot harder, but I do think that Mark Waid does as best as you can in a comic book deal with some very weighty topics in Champions, and Mark Waid, for those who follow his Twitter, is a politically opinionated man, let's say, and that's fine. That's good. That's good for Mark. And honestly, I probably agree with at least some of his ideas. And I think that he does find a good way to balance it in his storytelling. And that's what you have to do when you're doing these stories, and I think back to the Secret Empire story with Captain America, where it is just straight up, Nixon is evil and is running a supervillains cabal out of the White House. Don't get much more political than that now. But it was told as a good story first, and I think that you can kind of even in reading that story, you can even kind of walk away from it, even if you don't necessarily agree with the politics. You agree with the fact that it was a well-told story. And I think that's what all of these stories have to do, and I think that's probably why. And I'm not going to say that, DC's not doing good films, because DC is definitely making their money back on their films. But I think the reason why Marvel gets that critical acclaim is because they are definitely trying to tell that more complex story, where it's not, even though it's a more complex story and it is a good story, so that you don't have to agree with Iron Man or Captain America to like Civil War, You can watch it and go, oh, yeah, I like this film, even though, I think Cap is right, or I think Iron Man is right, or I think they're both idiots,
Mm-hmm.
It's still a good story, even if you don't necessarily agree with what the story is being said. How about you, Phil? What do you look for in a good political superhero crossover?
I'd like when they take maybe aspects of stuff we see in the real world, but I don't want to say this, they don't get too preachy. Like they don't try to steer you in a direction. They give you a situation, and you can see, maybe like you were saying with Civil War, both sides of the argument, and it's up to you to make your own decision.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, that's what I liked about that's what I like about these books when you read a lot of them. It is the problem that, when you're dealing with comic books, you really have to read. You got to read all the side books.
Yes.
It's very hard when you're just reading the main book to get the subtlety, because they tend to give you the shorthand of the conflict in the main book, and you really have to get, okay, this is how it goes deeper. This is the struggle between the two people, not just what the fights are, and to that extent, that's why if your film is relying on fights, your film is probably not going to get the critical acclaim, because as fun as fights are to watch, they don't really help the story. They don't make the story better. They just make things more difficult. I don't say the fights don't make the story better or make them more difficult, but it's like you can have the fights, but then you have to know why they're fighting, and it can't just be, well, here's a monster, let's punch it,
Mm-hmm.
because then you get into basically it's just monster of the week, and you might as well be watching Buffy. Not that Buffy's a bad show, but it's just this idea that any serialistic show like that is going to wind up with monster of the week shows, and if you wind up being defined by it being a monster of the week, then the show basically loses a lot of its cachet. And I think the problem with a lot of the DC movies is that they're just monster of the week movies. It's like there's not, the threat isn't deeper than just, oh well, here's a monster, here's the thing. Whether it's Batman v Superman fighting Doomsday, or the Suicide Squad fighting Enchantress.
Mm.
Oh man, have you seen the Honest trailer for Suicide Squad?
No, I don't think so.
Or the How It Should Have Ended. Man, they're both so savage on that, and just make the point that June Moon is just the worst archaeologist in the world. It's just like, oh, I found this Price's artifact. I wonder if I crack it open if there's something inside. Maybe chocolate.
No.
Oh, anyway. Yeah. So I mean, that's my view on that political stuff. But we don't just want to talk about politics tonight, Phil, because we got some really great new Marvel news, and I think what is like the most. This is what is on everybody's. So there's two big stories that we got today. One is from the MCU, and one is from the comic books. Do you want to do the comic book story first, or the movie story first?
We could do the movie story first. Are you talking about the trailer?
Oh, yes. And can I just say, man, for as great as a trailer as that, how does Michael Keaton as the bus driver steal that whole that whole trailer? I mean, is it just me, or is this? Do you see that and like, oh wow, that's a villain?
You know what? I'm like the last person on the planet. I haven't watched it yet. I'm probably going to watch it when we're done with this. But I've heard nothing but rave reviews about it. I mean, spoil it for me.
Okay, so it's got some sweet, fun stuff where it opens up with these guys, breaking into these ATMs, and they're wearing the Avengers masks, and they're the old plastic masks that you can't actually buy anymore. The ones that you used to wear in the 70s and 80s, where you had like the little rubber suit that's Spider-Man, and you had a little plastic mask on, or C-3PO, or So they've got the little masks on, and then in walks Spider-Man. He's like, I don't think you guys are really the Avengers. It's the Hulk. He's the one that gives it away. And then he quickly dispatches them. And then we get a lot of great scenes of high school life. We see Peter and I believe they say he's Ned Leeds, but he looks a heck of a lot like Gank. I'm not sure. But his tubby Asian friend, as they're watching Zendaya, who is I believe that's her name, who is the Michelle character, and then we see there's another girl who's like, I guess their fellow nerd girl, who I'm guessing is our Gwen Stacy, and she's it's like boys thing, very cute in that interplay. And we get a great scene with Robert Downey Jr. and Pete in the limo, and he's like, being an Avenger is easy. Just don't do anything I would do, and don't do anything I wouldn't do. There's a little gray area. That's where you operate between what I would do and what I wouldn't do, and so you can see there's going to be some great team ups there, but man. And it's like, so there's this scene of in like a school bus lot, and you see Spider-Man get thrown into a school bus and like bend the school bus wall in half, and then you see and it looks like he's driving a school bus. Is Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, played by Mike Keaton, and he basically says, I can't remember the exact quote, but it is just so powerful. It's like, you cross me, I will kill your entire family.
Ooh.
And it is like, oh heck, now this is a supervillain. This is how you do it upright. It's not being overwrought or anything. It's just, I am not afraid to murderize you. I will absolutely do you, because I don't play. I'm freaking Vulture. And we get a great look at the Vulture in full costume. It is, and if there's one thing that I'm going to say that is a little not 100% what I'm looking for, is the Vulture costume, mostly because it has like fan stabilizers. Really hoping they were going to work with more of an anti-grav quality, which was the original Vulture's thing, was the harness did have this now maybe there is going to be an anti-grav property to it as well. But then I don't know quite why you have the big wings and the fans,
maybe for like to steer it.
Yeah, I guess that maybe is more helpful, but it makes me worry that they don't that it doesn't seem as anti-grav quality, because the anti-grav was very important, because that's also what gave Adrian Toomes his strength and invulnerability. Made him be a guy who could very much be on par with Spider-Man, even though he was, an elderly fellow.
Yeah, but they do that stuff in the MCU. I mean, look at Iron Man in the first, especially in the first movie, he was using the repulsors for stability. He didn't do that in the comics.
Yeah, and so I can see that. I hope there is anti-grav quality there. I saw they also released, the close-up of the new Vulture toy, which does, again, look very awesome, but again, very much has that very tech quality to the suit that seems to work on actual laws of aerodynamics, which I guess is cool, but it's like, yeah, but don't lose what makes the villain magical, Don't make him just a suit. Make him be a supervillain. Make him be a threat even without his suit.
Yeah.
That's what's great about supervillains, is that they can have their magical device, but they should still be a threat even without the magical device. It makes more of a threat. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
At least that's what we're on that. Beyond that, I mean, it is a really fantastic trailer. Definitely see it, Phil. There's like callbacks in it. There's stuff you see. We go, oh yeah, that's they have this scene where Spider-Man is between two somethings that he's trying to hold together, and it's like him straining against his webs. It is beautiful. It is clearly looking like one of the best Spider-Man films ever made.
Well, yeah.
Granted, the bar is high, but
I hope so. I mean, the first one where the MCU has at least partial control, I hope it's the best one.
Yeah, so this looks good. So far, so good. One trailer in, it looks good. Now, Suicide Squad looked really good after one trailer too, but I think we get a lot more of what the story is in this than we got in the Suicide Squad trailer. As cool as the Suicide Squad trailer was, you really didn't get much story there. This was like, okay, this is kid in high school, him balancing high school and his superheroics, and I really like that. So that is very awesome. That is very cool. The other big news from Marvel this week, and definitely, Phil, go watch that trailer, because I want to hear your thoughts on it next week.
Before I go to bed tonight, I will watch it.
Yeah. So the other big news out of Marvel this week is we are getting a new Man-Thing series, and who's the writer of that film?
Is it R.L. Stine?
Yes, Mr. Stine is doing a Man-Thing, and it's basically going to be a horror anthology. Much in line with, much like the Tales of the Crypt. And we're going to have our, and people, I've seen, and man, it got me annoyed, because it's like, because he says Man-Thing will talk, and he says, "Oh, Man-Thing's gonna talk. That's awful." And it's like, you do know the Man-Thing can talk now, right? You're not sitting here saying, "Oh, I haven't read Man-Thing since 1978, but I'm going to be upset because it changed one quality of the Man-Thing from 1978." It's like the Man-Thing can talk since his Thunderbolts run.
Mm-hmm.
He may not talk much, but he can talk now. In fact, when he first let him talk, he was talking up a storm, and it was very cool because he as he became more aware as the nexus of all realities, he evolved, and basically he could speak to you in the language you understood, which was actually very kind of cool, because when he was talking to Boomerang, he was basically talking jive. Not that we ever saw Boomerang talk jive, but he was like, "Oh man," just throwing all this street slang, being cool. Much like Barbara Billingsley talking jive. Oh, okay. Yeah, and so I'm very excited about that because, Marvel really has never had in its main comic lines. I mean, I know it's had some horror anthologies before, but it's never really had something that was. It's never really had a House of Mystery kind of series that was as iconic as House of Mystery was. House of Mystery over at DC was a horror anthology that ran into the modern era, had a bunch of reinventions, and of course eventually became central to the DC mythos through Alan Moore's work with the Swamp Thing and the House of Mystery. So really love that fact. And so I'm really looking forward to what R.L. Stine, who is of course just a name when it comes to anthology horror, and you see this more and more now where these comic book companies are investing in these name writers, guys that haven't worked in comics before, but saying, "Hey, come and write some comics with us," which Marvel had been doing for years. They did that with Kevin Smith, although Kevin Smith apparently cannot meet a comic book deadline to save his life. He's still. I've recently found out there's still books he hasn't finished. There's a whole thing with Bullseye and Daredevil that's just sort of hanging out there. He'll get to one of these days. Oh, Kevin Smith, just lay off the pot for a little bit, buddy. Focus and write a book. Okay. That's
there's like a Batman series of miniseries. He's done 2 of them, and supposedly the 3rd one's coming, even though it's been 6 years or something.
The only one he's ever finished was the Black Cat Evil That Men Do.
And that took 2 or 3 years?
Which is a great series. I'm sorry?
That took 2 or 3 years.
Oh, no. I remember it was because I remember I was reading it and I was like, "Oh, this is great." And the first 2 issues came right out on time, and then okay, 3rd issue. Nope. And 3 years later, it's like, "Oh yeah, I just remembered that I had to finish that." It's like, yeah. And no one else is bugging about all the other books he has to finish, but that one is like, "Oh yeah, no, I got that one. I know you like the marijuana, Mr. Smith. It's like cookies. It's a sometimes food.
Well, he does multiple podcasts too, Charlie. You know how busy people get with multiple podcasts.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I have not written since I've been doing so many podcasts either, so who am I to judge? But then again, no one's paying me to write anything.
That's right.
Oh, that's okay. We're picking on Kevin Smith because he's not going to listen to this podcast, so...
And if you are, prove us wrong.
Yes, you write us and you write us like so much Stockton Piner or Kenneth Smyson, and we will read your letter on the air berating us. Oh, okay. Yeah, and of course the man also does still make movies too, which is his primary vocation, so I can't fault the man. He keeps himself busy. It just, and he did finish the one book that I was actually reading, so I really can't complain. It's like the one book that I was reading, he got that one done, It took him 3 years, but he got it done, and it was a very good book. But yes, but getting back to Man-Thing, I'm very excited by this book. I'm very excited by the idea that R.L. Stine is writing it, that we're going to have Man-Thing as sort of, I guess, as kind of a horror watcher, which I think is great. That's another thing that we're missing in the Marvel Universe right now is a narrating, an omniscient narrative watcher,
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a character that can do that. And that is going to be interesting. And of course, because Man-Thing is so much a part of the Marvel universe already, it's like, we'll get interesting cameos throughout this. You may even get like some characters brought back that you haven't seen in decades. It could get really interesting. And just how, horror exists in a superheroic universe, this could be a really fascinating book. So I'm very excited. The artwork on it looks very good. It's, like I say, it's supposed to be very, very reminiscent of the classic EC Tales from the Crypt. So I, for one, welcome our new swamp monster overlords. Now, here's a question for you, Phil. Did you watch our winter finale of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yes, I did.
Yes. I actually have not finished watching it yet. I'm getting like halfway through and I give up falling asleep because I work too much and it's like the kids.
Oh, you didn't see the ending?
I know what the ending is, but okay. I don't know what leads up to the ending. But it really struck me as fascinating because I was listening to our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of hit like some interesting things about Ada and her, what the Darkhold might have promised her, and the idea of freeing her oppressed robot brethren or becoming a real girl. And I know that the big reveal is we find out that the May that we are seeing in that episode is actually an LMD. Now, people were wondering how long has the May been an LMD, and I think it has to be relatively recent because we saw at the end of the previous episode, she was designing a brain.
Mm-hmm.
So she was basically improving upon her own design, and I think that was her creating the new May robot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be very upset if like that robot got to drink May's champagne with Coulson and missed out on it. Because I don't know if they drank it at the end of that episode like they said they were, but that's going to be very frustrating. But you know what bugs me the most about this? So we get Patriot in action. We get Commander Mace jumping into the fray. We still don't have an origin on Mace, and no one seems to worry about that.
Do you
think everyone's all excited about Ada and the LMDs and the Darkhold? I'm like, you just have a Golden Age character running around in this story, and nobody is like, well, what is his origin? Because that's what I want to know. What is his origin? What is his story?
Well, do you think the origin is coming? Because I thought I saw somewhere they're saying he's getting a uniform, like a superhero uniform. So I wonder if that's going to be like the origin episode.
He had a uniform in this last one, but it was a very S.H.I.E.L.D. uniform. But it's got your basic plates and steel and things, which is good. But yeah, I'd love to see him in a uniform. I'd love to see him in a mask. I'd love to see what happens next. Now, we have been theorizing that, the LMDs could be used to create a superhuman army.
Mm-hmm.
And with having maybe our first Ada-created LMD, do you think that could be where they're going with that? Do you think that we're going to see May in maybe a dual role as one of these superhuman LMDs? And, along those lines, are we going to see the actor who played Ward back as an LMD?
Oh, yeah, we could see him. We could see, hey, Rob, we could see Lucy Lawless back.
Yeah, we could see Lucy Lawless. Although she is busy right now. She is on Ash vs. the Evil Dead, which did get picked up for another season. So that's still out there. So, but you never know. You might be able to get her back, for at least a cameo bit. So I'm very fascinated by where it's going. One thing we have said, we know that the next half of the season is titled S.H.I.E.L.D. LMD. So we know the LMD threat is going to be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That we've solved the Darkhold mystery apparently, but or at least partially. I still don't know how we resolve it. But I'm guessing Uncle what was his name? Elias?
Yeah, it was something like that because it wasn't an Eli. Yeah,
Uncle Eli. Yeah. Eli gets dealt with. I don't know how, so don't spoil it for me yet, Phil. Unless you want to spoil it for me, Fry.
No, I was gonna say tonight you go finish Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'll watch Spider-Man Homecoming trailer.
He's gonna wind up in the room next to Aunt, great Aunt Silvestri, or trying to cut her face off from the 1940s. Still, yeah, still waiting for Agent Carter to come back, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to see how they resolve that. I'm imagining a penance stare is involved.
You might be wrong.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to see what happens. As you know, maybe he's trying to cut his face off. Like I said, I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. But we definitely know the LMDs are going to be the new threat, or the LMDs are going to be central to the story. We don't know if they're going to be the threat yet. And it's an interesting question. And this is one of these things I always get into: is Ada an AI? Because officially, LMDs aren't supposed to be AIs. They're just really really socially interactive computer programs. So they're kind of like, Siri on steroids is the idea. That they are like Siri, but with like a huge database of RAM that can just really seem human, but who are not human. And I always use the comparison to Gideon in Legends of Tomorrow. Gideon is not an AI, and they don't play her as an AI. Because her data, she's not going to ever suggest something to you unless you're talking to her at that time about that subject. But it's like, she's never going to say, hey, I have this ability, so why don't I do this for you? Or I can do this, so why don't we do that? She's just going to sit there silently, which is why throughout it, it's kind of funny because everyone's like, oh, we got to figure out a way to do this. And it's like, no one ever thinks, hey, maybe we should just ask Ada to do that, because Ada doesn't suggest she can do that. Like, Eobard's in the bridge. How can we deal with it? Maybe we should, Ada's not going to say, well, I could simply override all of my commands so he can't do anything. I could simply lock him out of the system, or someone, but unless someone tells Ada, lock him out of the system, Ada, seal the pod bay doors, Ada do this, Ada do that. Unless someone does that, Ada's not going to do it because she's not an AI. She can't self-direct. Now, Gideon can't self-direct. Ada, however, it's an interesting question. Is she self-directing? Is she being directed by the Darkhold? What is directing Ada?
Or whatever she was, did the Darkhold bump her up the evolutionary chain a couple?
Maybe now she is directing. It is interesting. Or and at that same way, is she maybe following her directive to protect the agents with LMDs, even though she's doing it in this rather untoward way,
Yeah, it's like I need to protect humanity. Well, what's the best way to protect humanity? Lock them up and replace them with LMDs.
Exactly. Now you're safe and sound. Yes, very awesome. That's the question with Ada, and we're not going to know until January.
Nope.
This is going to resolve, but we're looking forward to it. Okay. And beyond that, is there anything else going on in Marvel right now, Phil? Anything you want to talk about?
I don't think. I think we hit everything pretty well tonight.
Well, there was one other bit of new news, though not much to go with it yet. The next reboot of the X-Men franchise is going to be New Mutants. So that's it. Get some Cypher, get some Wolfsbane, maybe Warlock. It'll be cool. Get Roberto da Costa. He's awesome. We'll see how they play him. If they're going to play him in the way that they play him in the Avengers, now that that's an awesome character in Avengers, or are they going to sort of retrograde him back? But
I was going to say, do you think with Hugh Jackman going to be leaving the franchise soon, do you think they're going to maybe step away from the X-Men proper and like try to spin off all these all the other offshoots? Like, I mean, we already have Deadpool. We're going to go with New Mutants. Weren't they talking about X-Force also? I mean, there's 20 million mutant groups. X Factor. You could do how many?
Well, this is why we said this is why Fox doesn't need to sell. They've got a backbench.
Yeah.
And why Disney isn't going to pay all that money for that backbench, because they have their backbench. They don't need each other. They both have their own relatively self-contained universes. Ryan Reynolds says he really wants Hugh Jackman to come to the Deadpool franchise, to come in as Wolverine at least once,
Yeah.
And it's gonna be interesting how they play that, because of course Deadpool is because he is the metafictional character, he's the character that could go between, Foxiverse stories,
Mm-hmm.
even being maybe even something of a connective tissue between the old, and that goes to another question: is in this rebooting of the New Mutants, is it going to be universe contingent? Are they going to be, and maybe they're going to have X-23 in that, and all this stuff after our Old Man Logan film, or are they going to be just a completely new reboot, and it's the New Mutants? Although then you have to ask, why are they the New Mutants if they're just the first group of mutants in this new X-Men universe? I don't know. We'll have to see. So I mean that's just all rank speculation at this point. We'll see what happens. Hopefully it'll be good.
Mm-hmm.
The X-Men films are always hit and miss,
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're like, feeling good about Old Man Logan, though. Fingers crossed. Okay, Phil, if people would like to reach out to you, touch you, or talk to you, the way our good friends Stockton Piner and Kenneth Smyson do, how can they find you?
Well, if you want to discuss anything Marvel, DC, anything like that with me, you can always email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am @nightwingpdp. And check me out on a bunch of DC podcasts: Before the Bat, Channel 52, and Legends of DC with a bunch of my friends, including Mr. Charlie Esser.
Yay, that's me. Okay, and of course, as always, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Maz and Paz once did, do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivity, just like the show, blog, and that's all one word, @gmail.com. And of course, follow me on the Twitters, the way all the hip young hipsters in Detroit and Brooklyn do, @CharlieEsser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for connecting with us this week. Please connect with us again.